The royal flagship of the Celestial Empire drifted through the stars like a gleaming jewel. Princess Lyra stared out of the viewing portal in her private chambers, her iridescent skin catching the light of a nearby sun. She sighed deeply, her four-fingered hand tracing patterns on the glass. Another day, another boring lesson about proper royal conduct, she muttered to herself. At 17 cycles old, Lyra was at the age when most royal children began their diplomatic training. But all she could think about was what lay beyond, the confines of the Imperial fleet. The universe was vast and full of wonders she had only read about in the royal archives. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime at her door. "Enter," she called out, straightening her posture as she had been taught. Her tutor, Master Drone, stepped into the room with several data tablets floating behind him. "Princess, I bring news that might interest you," said Drone, his voice formal, but with a hint of excitement. "The Imperial Scout Fleet has discovered a new world in Sector 7. They call it Earth." Lyra's four eyes widened. "Tell me everything," she demanded, suddenly alert. "It is classified as a Class 3 developing world. The inhabitants call themselves humans. They have achieved basic space travel but have not yet mastered faster-than-light technology," Drone explained, projecting images from one of his tablets. Lyra studied the images with growing fascination. The humans looked strange with their two eyes, five-fingered hands, and skin in various shades of brown and pink. They seemed so fragile compared to her people, but there was something about them that caught her attention. "They are quite resilient for their level of development," Drone continued. "Initial reports suggest they have survived multiple near-extinction events through their history. The Science Council finds this most intriguing." "What will happen to them?" Lyra asked, already knowing the answer. "Your father, King Orion, and mother, Queen Vega, are meeting with the Imperial Council now. As with all Class 3 worlds, they will likely send an observation team before deciding whether Earth is worth bringing into the Empire." Lyra knew what that meant. If deemed valuable, Earth would be conquered, its resources harvested, and its people would serve the Empire. If deemed worthless, it would be marked for future review and left alone for now. "I wish to learn more about these humans," Lyra declared. Drone looked uneasy. "Princess, they are primitive beings. Most Imperial citizens view them as potential servants at best. Yet you said they are resilient. That makes them interesting," Lyra countered. Later that night, when the royal wing was quiet, Lyra slipped through the corridors of the flagship using secret passages she had discovered years ago. She made her way to the royal meeting chamber, where recordings of all council sessions were stored. With practiced ease, she accessed the files from today's meeting and watched her parents discuss Earth's fate with their advisors. "An observation team will be sent," King Orion's deep voice announced. "We will capture a few specimens for study. Based on their findings, we will decide our approach." Lyra made her decision then. She would be on that observation team, one way or another. 3 cycles later, using her royal access codes and calling in favors from servants loyal to her, Princess Lyra boarded the observation vessel disguised as a junior science officer. Her parents would be furious when they discovered her absence, but by then, it would be too late. The journey to Earth took only days with the Empire's technology. They entered the atmosphere under cover of night, their ship cloaked from human detection systems. "Target identified," announced Commander Vex. "Military compound with isolated guards, optimal for specimen collection." Lyra watched from the control room as the capture team deployed. On the screens, she could see a human walking alone along the perimeter of a fenced facility. He carried what the briefing described as a primitive projectile weapon. "This one," Vex ordered, "looks healthy and strong. The science division will get good data." A flash of light enveloped the human, and moments later he materialized in the ship's holding cell, unconscious but unharmed. Lyra's heart raced with excitement. She had never been this close to a being from another world before. When the science team cleared the area, she slipped into the observation room adjacent to the holding cell. The human was awake now, sitting calmly on the floor of his cell. Unlike the other specimens brought aboard, who had panicked upon waking, this one seemed to be methodically examining his surroundings. He tested the invisible barrier of his cell once, nodded to himself, and then sat down in a position Lyra later learned was called cross-legged. According to his identification tags retrieved during capture, his name was Jack. He was part of what humans called their special forces. Though to the Empire, all human military technology was hopelessly primitive. Yet there was nothing primitive about the intelligence in his eyes as they swept the room, pausing briefly on the observation window. Although the glass appeared as a solid wall from his side, Lyra felt as if he was looking right at her. "Fascinating, isn't he?" said a voice behind her. Lyra jumped and turned to see Dr. Mira, the chief xenobiologist. "I was just curious," Lyra explained, trying to sound professional despite her royal upbringing. "He seems different from the others." Dr. Mira nodded. "This one has training. Notice how he controls his breathing and heart rate. Most captured subjects experience extreme stress, but he's regulating his response. Quite impressive for a species at their development level." When Dr. Mira left, Lyra stayed, watching Jack for hours. She observed as he was brought food, how he carefully examined it before eating, how he exercised in the confined space, maintaining his strength, how he seemed to be memorizing the patterns of the guards' visits. On the third day, when Jack was alone, he looked directly at the observation window and did something unexpected. He smiled and waved. "I know you're there," he said in his language, which Lyra understood through her universal translator. "You've been watching longer than the others. You're curious, not just studying. That makes you different too." Lyra gasped. He couldn't possibly see her, yet somehow he knew. Against all protocols, she reached for the communication control and spoke. "How did you know I was here?" Jack's smile widened. "The air circulation changes when someone enters that room, and you breathe differently than the scientists." In that moment, as their eyes met across the barrier between their worlds, Lyra felt something shift inside her. This human was clever, observant, and unafraid despite his captivity. Before she could respond further, alarms blared throughout the ship. The observation team had been discovered by Earth's defense systems. They needed to leave immediately. As the ship prepared for emergency departure, Lyra made a silent promise to herself. She would learn everything she could about this human. Jack was no primitive specimen to be studied and discarded. He was the most interesting being she had ever encountered, and Princess Lyra always got what she wanted. The observation vessel rejoined the royal flagship 3 days later. Princess Lyra had barely avoided discovery during their hasty return, slipping back into her royal quarters through maintenance tunnels. A formal reprimand from her tutor about missed lessons was her only punishment. Her parents were too busy with Empire matters to notice her brief absence. The human specimens, including Jack, were transferred to a secure research wing of the flagship. Most aliens aboard regarded these humans as nothing more than curious animals, but Lyra knew better. She had seen the intelligence in Jack's eyes. "Princess, your focus during lessons has been poor," Master Drawn noted, as Lyra stared out the window, for the third time that hour. "The history of the 7th Imperial expansion is essential knowledge for a future ruler." "Yes, Master Drone," Lyra replied automatically, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of boredom among her species. "But surely understanding other species is equally important for a ruler." Drawn paused, surprised by her question. "The Empire has catalogued over 10,000 sentient species. Most serve their purpose within our hierarchy." "And the humans? What is their purpose?" Lyra asked. "That remains to be determined. The research division will assess their capabilities," Drone answered. Now back to the lesson. That night, Lyra used her royal access codes to enter the research wing. The night shift. Guards nodded respectfully as she passed. Even disguised in simple clothes, her royal markings were visible on her skin, a genetic trait of the imperial family that could not be hidden. "I wish to observe the human subjects," she stated with practiced authority. "Of course, Your Highness," the chief guard replied, not questioning why the princess would be interested in primitive beings. Royal curiosity was not to be questioned. Jack was separated from the other humans, kept in a larger observation chamber with better amenities. The scientists had already recognized he was different, more valuable for their studies. When Lyra entered the observation room, Jack was doing what the research notes called push-ups. His muscles flexed under his skin as he raised and lowered his body with controlled strength. Sweat gleamed on his forehead, a biological cooling mechanism that fascinated the alien scientists. He stopped immediately when the door opened, rising to his feet in a fluid motion. His eyes narrowed slightly when he saw Lyra. "You're the one from the ship," he said in his language. "The one who spoke to me." Lyra was startled. The universal translator relayed his words, but she hadn't expected him to remember her voice after just one brief exchange. "You recognize my voice," she said, stepping closer to the transparent barrier. Jack nodded. "I never forget a voice, or a breathing pattern." He studied her with those strange two eyes. "You're important here. The guards stand differently when you enter." Lyra smiled, impressed by his observation skills. "My name is Lyra." "Just Lyra? No title?" Jack asked, one corner of his mouth lifting in what the research notes called a half-smile. "Princess Lyra of the Celestial Empire, daughter of King Orion, and Queen Vega, heir to the 7 systems," she recited, then shrugged. "But just Lyra is fine." "Well, just Lyra," Jack said. "I'm Jack, no titles." He approached the barrier cautiously. Up close, Lyra could see the interesting colors in his eyes, a shade the notes called blue with tiny darker flecks. "Why did you capture us?" he asked directly. Lyra hesitated. "To study your species. Earth is new to us." "And after the study?" She looked away. "That decision hasn't been made yet." Jack nodded as if her non-answer told him everything. "Your empire doesn't make first contact. It makes assessments. I understand." He turned away and picked up one of the strange objects the scientist had provided. Paper and a primitive marking tool called a pencil. The researchers wanted to study human creativity and cognitive functions. Jack began drawing something with quick, precise strokes. When he finished, he held it up. It was a remarkably accurate sketch of Lyra. "You have artistic ability," she noted, genuinely impressed. "Just another skill," Jack replied. "In my line of work, observing details can be the difference between life and death." Over the next several days, Lyra visited frequently. She brought data tablets containing information about the Empire, ostensibly to observe Jack's reactions to their technology. In reality, she was teaching him about her world and he was teaching her about his. Jack learned her language with surprising speed while she learned his. They developed a system of drawing and gestures to bridge the gaps in translation. "Your species values hierarchy," Jack noted one evening as he studied a chart of the Empire's structure. "Everything has its place." "And yours doesn't?" Lyra asked. "We have leaders and followers, but we also value what we call freedom," Jack explained, struggling with a concept that had no direct translation in her language. Their conversations were interrupted when alarms blared through the research wing. Lyra rushed to the monitoring station to find that one of the other human captives had fallen ill, his biological functions failing rapidly. "What's happening?" she demanded of the medical officer. "This specimen's body is rejecting the standard nutrition. We're adjusting the formula, but its condition is deteriorating," the officer reported dispassionately. Lyra returned to Jack's chamber and explained the situation. His face hardened with an emotion she couldn't name. "That's Tom. He has food allergies," Jack explained. "He needs specific nutrients. Your scientists wouldn't know that from a general human assessment." "Can you help?" Lyra asked. Jack quickly listed the foods Tom could safely eat and those he couldn't. Lyra relayed this information to the medical team, claiming it came from her own research into human biology. They were skeptical but followed her royal command. Tom recovered within hours, much to the scientists' surprise. The next day, Lyra learned that the Imperial Guards had been rough with some of the human captives who had attempted to communicate with each other through the barriers of their cells. When she visited Jack's chamber, she found him standing rigid, his face showing that unnamed emotion again. "Your guards hurt Lisa when she tried to talk to me through the wall," he said without greeting. She's a civilian scientist. She poses no threat. They were following protocol for specimen control, Lyra explained, feeling strangely defensive. Jack's eyes flashed. We're not specimens. We're people. Before Lyra could respond, a commotion erupted in the corridor. A group of new Imperial guards had entered, and were dragging Lisa from her cell for what they called enhanced interrogation about human defenses. Without warning, Jack slammed his fist against the emergency release panel inside his cell, a design flaw no one had considered a human would notice or be able to exploit. The barrier flickered and failed. In seconds, Jack was in the corridor. He didn't attack the guards directly. That would have been suicide against their superior strength and weapons. Instead, he positioned himself between them and Lisa, hands raised in a non-threatening posture. If you want to interrogate someone, take me, he said calmly. She's a climate scientist. I'm military. I have the information you want. The guards hesitated, confused by this unexpected behavior. In their experience, captured species either cowered or attacked. This calculated self-sacrifice fit neither pattern. Lyra arrived at the scene and froze. Jack stood tall despite being surrounded by guards twice his size. He showed no fear, only determination. Stand down, she commanded the guards. Return the female to her cell, unharmed. But, Princess, the Admiral ordered. One guard began. I countermand that order, Lyra stated, drawing herself to her full height. These subjects are valuable research assets not to be damaged. She turned to Jack. Return to your chamber, now. Jack held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded, and walked calmly back to his cell. That night, as Lyra lay in her royal bed, she couldn't forget the image of Jack standing against the guards. He had known he couldn't win. He had known he might be killed. Yet he had acted to protect another, without hesitation. Unknown to Lyra, Queen Vega had observed the entire incident through the security system. The Queen watched with growing interest as her daughter visited the human again the next day, bringing books and more information tablets. This human, Queen Vega murmured to herself. He's changing her. The Queen wasn't sure if this was dangerous, or exactly what her daughter needed. The attack came without warning. The royal flagship shuddered violently, throwing Princess Lyra from her bed. Warning sirens wailed throughout the massive vessel as emergency lights bathed her chambers in pulsing red. Your Highness, her personal guard burst through the door. We must get you to the royal safe zone immediately. What's happening? Lyra demanded, already pulling on her formal attire. The Void Collective has breached our outer defenses, the guard explained, his voice tight with tension. 3 of their stealth destroyers emerged from hyperspace directly alongside us. Lyra felt a chill run through her 4 hearts. The Void Collective, deadly rivals of the Celestial Empire for generations, were known for their ruthless efficiency and advanced cloaking technology. My parents? She asked, hurrying alongside her guard down the corridor. The King and Queen are already secure, Princess. They await you. Another explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered and went out completely before emergency power engaged at half strength. Something was terribly wrong. The flagship's defenses should have been impenetrable. The main security grid is failing, her guard reported after checking his communication device. They've somehow infected our systems. As they rounded a corner, 3 Void Collective soldiers appeared, their dark armor absorbing the dim light. They raised their weapons. Lyra's guard pushed her behind him and fired his plasma rifle, hitting one attacker before a return shot burned through his chest. He collapsed, and Lyra found herself defenseless as the remaining 2 soldiers advanced. The Princess, one of them growled in the harsh collective dialect. Our commander will be pleased. Lyra backed away, her royal training forgotten in the face of imminent death or capture. The collective was known to torture royal captives for both information and pleasure. Suddenly, the ventilation duct above the soldiers burst open. A figure dropped down between Lyra and her attackers, a human figure. Jack. He moved with shocking speed, driving his fist into the throat of the nearest soldier before the alien could react. As the soldier dropped his weapon and clutched his Crushed windpipe, Jack snatched up the fallen gun and fired a precise shot that dropped the second attacker. "You okay?" Jack asked Lyra, his eyes quickly scanning her for injuries. "How did you—" Lyra began, staring at him in disbelief. "Your security systems are compromised," Jack cut her off. Every cell in the research wing opened simultaneously. "I'm guessing that wasn't intentional." Another explosion, closer this time. The deck beneath them trembled. "We need to move," Jack said, checking the plasma rifle he'd acquired. "Where's the safest place on this ship?" "The Royal Bunker," Lyra answered automatically. "Level 12, Central Core. My parents are there." Jack nodded and gestured for her to lead the way. "Stay behind me when we approach corners." As they navigated the damaged corridors, Lyra noticed Jack moved differently than in his cell. Fluid, alert, deadly. This was the human in his element, she realized. A warrior. "Why are you helping me?" she asked as they paused at a junction. "You could escape during the chaos." Jack glanced at her with those strange blue eyes. "Escape to where? We're in deep space." He checked around the corner before continuing. "Besides, you treated us like people, not specimens. That counts for something." They encountered 3 more collective patrols on their journey. Each time, Jack neutralized the threat with an efficiency that stunned Lyra. He used the ship's design against the attackers, creating choke points and ambushes that compensated for his human limitations against the physically stronger aliens. When they finally reached level 12, they found the entrance to the Royal Bunker guarded by dead Imperial soldiers. The massive door remained sealed, but the security panel was flashing red. Another system failure. "My parents are trapped inside," Lyra said, rushing to the panel. "And we're locked out." Jack examined the mechanism. "This is a physical backup system, right? For when digital security fails?" Lyra nodded. "It requires royal DNA to activate." "Then we're in luck," Jack said, gesturing to her. "Last I checked, you qualify." Lyra pressed her palm against the scanner, but nothing happened. The power connections must be damaged. Jack knelt and pried open the panel beneath the scanner. Inside was a tangle of unfamiliar technology. He studied it for a moment, then looked up at Lyra. "I need you to describe how this should work," he said. "I might be able to bypass the damaged sections." Lyra explained the basic principles while Jack rewired connections with steady hands. Within minutes, the scanner hummed to life. Lyra placed her palm on it again, and this time the massive door began to slide open. Inside the bunker, King Orion and Queen Vega stood with their remaining royal guards, weapons drawn and aimed at the opening door. When they saw Lyra, relief flooded their faces until they noticed Jack standing behind her. "A human," King Orion roared. "Guards!" "No." Lyra stepped in front of Jack. "He saved my life. 3 times. The Void Collective would have captured or killed me without his help." The king hesitated, his 4 eyes narrowing as he studied the strange alien who stood protectively near his daughter. Queen Vega moved forward, her regal face unreadable. "You helped our daughter when you could have escaped?" Jack straightened, to attention, a military posture Lyra had seen him practice in his cell. "Yes, Your Majesty." The queen studied him silently for a long moment. "You are the one from the research wing, the one who protected the female of your species from the guards." Jack's surprise showed briefly on his face. "You know about that?" "I observe everything that happens on my ship," Queen Vega stated simply, "especially when it involves my daughter." A deafening explosion shook the entire level. Dust rained from the ceiling as the lights flickered. "They've breached the central core," reported one of the guards, checking his communication device. "Our forces are falling back on all levels." The king turned to his security chief. "Evacuation protocol, prepare the royal shuttle." As the royal guards hurried to carry out orders, the king gestured to Jack. "You, human, give your weapon to my guards." Jack hesitated, looking at Lyra. "Please," she said quietly. "Trust me as I trusted you." After a moment, Jack handed the plasma rifle to the nearest guard. The king nodded stiffly, then turned his attention to evacuation plans. Lyra pulled Jack aside. Thank you for saving me. Don't thank me yet, Jack replied, his voice low. We're still on a ship under attack by people who want your entire family dead. The evacuation party moved quickly through secret passages built into the ship's design, accessible only to the royal family. They emerged near a hangar containing a sleek shuttle, the royal escape vessel. As they approached the shuttle, a group of Void Collective soldiers burst through the main hangar doors. In the ensuing firefight, 2 royal guards fell immediately. Jack didn't hesitate. He grabbed a fallen guard's weapon and pushed Lyra behind a cargo container. Then he fired with precision, dropping 3 attackers in quick succession. The king and queen watched in amazement as this supposedly primitive being coordinated with their remaining guards, calling out enemy positions and creating a defensive perimeter that allowed the royal family to reach the shuttle. Once inside, the shuttle's automated systems engaged, breaking away from the damaged flagship and accelerating into space. In the sudden quiet of the shuttle cabin, Lyra turned to find her mother staring at Jack with newfound respect. Your combat skills are impressive for a species at your development level, Queen Vega noted. Thank you, Your Majesty, Jack replied formally. Lyra stepped forward, her posture reflecting the royal training she normally tried to avoid. Mother, Father, I have a request. King Orion raised an eyebrow ridge. This seems an unusual time for requests, daughter. I want this human as my personal guard, Lyra stated firmly. The king started to object, but Queen Vega placed a hand on his arm. The human has proven his worth and loyalty, she said thoughtfully. Perhaps there is more to these beings than our scientist reported. He is still a captive specimen, the king argued. He could have escaped during the attack, Lyra countered. Instead, he came looking for me. He saved me. He saved all of us. Queen Vega regarded Jack with calculating eyes. Would you serve as protector to our daughter, human? Jack looked at Lyra, then back to the queen. My name is Jack. And yes, I would protect her. Why? The king demanded. We took you from your world by force. Jack's answer was simple. Because she saw me as a person when everyone else saw a specimen. The queen nodded slowly. Then it is decided. You will become the first human royal companion in the history of our empire. As the shuttle sped toward the nearest imperial outpost, Lyra couldn't help smiling. In the midst of disaster, she had found an unexpected ally and perhaps something more. Behind her, she heard her mother murmur to her father, There is something about this human that intrigues me. Perhaps our daughter's fascination was not mere childish curiosity after all. The king merely grunted, still suspicious of the alien who had somehow worked his way into the royal circle. Jack caught Lyra's eye and gave her what humans called a smile. For the first time, she tried to return the expression, her facial muscles forming an approximation of the human gesture. It felt right. 3 months passed since the attack on the royal flagship. The Celestial Empire had responded with crushing force against the Void Collective, pushing them back to the outer systems. Meanwhile, Princess Lyra and her unusual human guardian had become the subject of endless gossip throughout the imperial court. Jack stood at attention outside Lyra's private study, his posture perfect even after hours of guard duty. The imperial tailors had created a special uniform for him, black with silver trim to mark his unique status as the first human royal companion. The nobles whispered behind their hands when he passed, but Jack ignored them. Inside her study, Lyra was reviewing reports on various imperial planets when her communication panel chimed. Princess, the Strategic Council meeting begins in 10 minutes, announced the palace AI. Lyra sighed and closed her data screens. These council meetings had become increasingly frequent as the Empire finalized its plans for Earth. As the princess, she was expected to attend, though she had little real power to influence decisions. Jack, we have to go to the council chamber, she called as she emerged from her study. Jack nodded and fell into step beside her. After weeks of argument, Queen Vega had convinced the king to allow Jack to carry a sidearm, a concession that recognized his role as Lyra's protector rather than just a curiosity. As they walked, Lyra noticed Jack seemed tense, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings more vigilantly than usual. "Is something wrong?" she asked quietly. "Just a feeling," he replied, keeping his voice low. "Your Admiral Krell and his staff have been watching me more closely lately." Lyra frowned. Admiral Krell had been the most vocal opponent of Jack's appointment as her guardian. "He still doesn't trust you." "He's right not to," Jack said with a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm not loyal to your empire, I'm loyal to you." The distinction warmed Lyra's hearts, though she knew it would horrify her father if he heard it. They arrived at the massive doors of the Strategic Council chamber. Jack would normally wait outside, but today Lyra felt uneasy. "Come in with me," she decided. "Stay by the wall." The guards at the door looked uncertain but didn't dare question a royal command. Inside, the Empire's highest military and political leaders sat around a circular table. King Orion presided at the head, with Queen Vega at his right. Admiral Krell stood at a large holographic display showing Earth and its solar system. "As you can see, Your Majesty," Krell was saying, "our preliminary assessment of Earth is complete. The planet has abundant resources, particularly in rare minerals and biological diversity. The humans have conveniently gathered much of the valuable materials in centralized locations they call cities." Lyra took her seat quietly, gesturing for Jack to stand behind her. She noticed several council members glaring at his presence. "And the resistance assessment?" asked the king. Admiral Krell's face twisted into what passed for a smile among their species. "Minimal, Your Majesty. Their weapons are primitive. Their militaries are divided by national boundaries. They have no unified defense system." He tapped the display, highlighting several points on Earth. "We've identified their nuclear arsenals, which are their only weapons of concern. A precision first strike will eliminate those." Lyra felt Jack stiffen behind her. She realized with sudden clarity that he had never been told the Empire's intentions for his world. "Casualties?" asked Queen Vega, her voice neutral. "Initial phase. Approximately 300 million humans," Krell reported. "Phase 2 harvesting operations will require work camps for the most useful specimens. The rest are expendable." Lyra couldn't bring herself to look at Jack. She heard his breathing change, becoming controlled and measured just as it had been when she first observed him in captivity. "When do we begin?" the king asked. "The invasion fleet will be ready." "In 14 days, Your Majesty," Krell replied. "We recommend immediate action before the humans detect our presence in their system." "Very well." King Orion nodded. "Prepare the fleet. This council is adjourned until final preparations are complete." As the council members rose and began filing out, Lyra finally turned to Jack. His face was expressionless, but his eyes burned, with an intensity that startled her. "You knew," he said quietly. "Not a question. Not everything," she whispered. "Not the numbers. Not so soon." Back in her chambers, Jack finally let his control break. 300 million people. That's nearly the entire population of my continent. "Jack, did you bring me here just to watch my world burn?" he demanded, pacing like a caged animal. "Was that the plan? Make the human care for you, then let him see his species enslaved?" "No," Lyra cried, her inner eyelids blinking rapidly. In distress. "I never wanted this. I thought there would be more time. I thought I could change their minds about Earth." Jack stopped pacing and studied her face. "You really didn't know the full plan, did you?" Lyra shook her head. "I knew the Empire wanted Earth's resources, but..." She looked away. "I've never seen the beginning of an invasion before. I didn't understand what it meant." Jack's shoulders slumped slightly. "And now? Now I don't know what to do," she admitted. "I'm just the princess. I have no real power to stop this." Jack was quiet for a long moment, then he looked up with new determination. "We need to warn Earth." "That's impossible," Lyra said. "All communications are monitored. Any message to Earth would be intercepted immediately." "There must be a way," Jack insisted. "Your people underestimate humans. If we're warned, if we unite, we might stand a chance." "Against the Imperial fleet?" Lyra asked incredulously. "Jack, you've seen our technology. Your world has nothing that can match it. Maybe not in conventional weapons, Jack admitted. But humans are resourceful. We've survived worse odds throughout our history. He stepped closer to her. Lyra, help me. Please. Billions of innocent lives depend on it. Lyra felt torn between her loyalty to the Empire, to her family, and her growing conviction that the invasion was wrong. Jack had shown her that humans were not the simple primitives her people believed them to be. They were complex, capable, worthy of respect. There might be a way, she said finally. The quantum communication array in my mother's private observatory. It's secure, designed for her personal use. It can send a targeted message that might bypass regular monitoring. Jack's eyes lit up. Can you access it? Yes, but we'd need a way to make sure the message reaches the right people on Earth, Lyra explained. People who could actually prepare a defense. I know exactly who to contact, Jack said. But we'll need time alone in the observatory. That night, they put their plan into action. Lyra used her royal access to enter her mother's observatory, claiming she wanted to show Jack the beauty of the cosmos from this unique vantage point. The guards, accustomed to her eccentric interest in the human, merely nodded. Once inside, Jack worked quickly at the communication console while Lyra kept watch. His fingers flew over the alien controls as he applied everything he had learned about Imperial technology over the past months. I'm sending the message directly to my commanding officer, Jack explained as he worked, including everything I've learned about your ships, weapons, and tactics. Lyra watched him with mixed emotions. Will it be enough? It has to be, Jack replied grimly. I'm also telling them about the Empire's underestimation of human capabilities. That's our biggest advantage. Just as Jack sent the transmission, the observatory door slid open. Queen Vega stood in the entrance, her regal face unreadable. Mother, Lyra gasped. The Queen's eyes moved from her daughter to Jack to the active communication array. I suspected you might try something like this. The human has changed you, daughter. Your Majesty, Jack began, stepping forward protectively. Queen Vega held up a hand. I should call the guards immediately. What you've done is treason against the Empire. Lyra moved to stand beside Jack. Mother, the invasion is wrong. Humans aren't just specimens to be harvested. They're people. Complex, intelligent, worthy of respect. So you betray your own kind for his? The Queen asked, her voice strangely calm. I'm trying to prevent a massacre, Lyra replied. That's not betrayal. That's decency. The Queen was silent for a long moment, studying them both. Then, to their shock, she sighed deeply. Your father won't see it that way, nor will Admiral Krell. Before either could respond, alarms blared throughout the palace. A voice announced over the communication system. Security breach detected. Unauthorized transmission to Sector 7. All Royal Guards report to stations. They've detected the message, Lyra whispered in horror. Queen Vega moved with surprising speed, sealing the observatory door. Listen carefully. You have minutes before they trace the transmission here. You're helping us? Jack asked in disbelief. I have watched you, human, the Queen said. I have seen how you protected my daughter, how you've shown her aspects of leadership that years of royal training failed to instill. She turned to Lyra. And I have watched you grow from a curious child into someone who questions whether power should be used simply because it exists. The Queen moved to a hidden panel in the wall and pressed her palm against it. A secret door slid open, revealing a narrow passage. This leads to my private shuttle bay. The small craft there has no tracking devices. It's designed for absolute royal privacy. Lyra stared at her mother in shock. You want us to escape? I want you to live, Queen Vega said firmly. Your father has just received word of your betrayal. Admiral Krell has convinced him that the human has corrupted you, turned you against your own people. Her eyes softened. Perhaps he has changed you, but not in the way they believe. Come with us, Lyra pleaded. The Queen shook her head. My place is here. Someone must speak for reason when rage has cooled. She looked at Jack. Take care of her. With my life, Jack promised. As they hurried down the secret passage, Lyra glanced back at her mother one last time. The Queen stood tall and proud, a small smile on her face, as the door closed between them. I never thought she would help us, Lyra whispered as they ran. She loves you, Jack said simply. That transcends species. They reached the shuttle bay just as they heard guards breaking into the observatory behind them. Within moments, they were aboard the small royal craft and accelerating away from the Imperial Palace. Where to now? Lyra asked as stars streaked past the view screen. Earth, Jack said, his face set with determination. We warned them. Now we help them prepare. As the shuttle entered hyperspace, Lyra realized she had chosen her side in the coming conflict. Not the Empire that had raised her, not Earth that she barely knew. She had chosen something new, a future where both might exist together in peace. Earth's Defense Command Center buzzed with frantic activity. Scientists, military leaders, and government officials from around the world had gathered in this underground facility. Their former rivalries set aside in the face of an unprecedented threat. Commander Ellis, Jack's former superior officer, stood before a massive screen displaying the approaching Imperial fleet. 2 weeks had passed since Jack and Princess Lyra had arrived on Earth with their warning, barely escaping the Empire's pursuit ships. The main invasion force will enter our solar system in approximately 6 hours, Ellis announced to the assembled leaders. Thanks to the information provided by Jack and Princess Lyra, we've prepared as best we can. At the back of the room, Jack stood beside Lyra, who wore a hooded cloak to hide her alien features. Many humans still reacted with fear or hostility to her appearance despite her role in warning Earth. Your people have accomplished so much in such a short time, Lyra whispered, watching engineers hurry past with equipment modified using Imperial technology from her shuttle. Jack nodded. Humans are at their best when facing impossible odds. It's kind of our specialty. Ellis approached them, her face grave but determined. Jack, the quantum communication device is ready. Princess Lyra, we need you to make the call. They followed. Ellis to a sealed chamber where scientists had combined Earth technology with components from Lyra's royal shuttle to create a communication system capable of reaching the Imperial flagship. Are you sure about this? Jack asked Lyra as technicians prepared the system. Lyra took a deep breath. It's our only chance. My father might not listen to me, but my mother will. And if they trace the signal? If they discover you're here? Jack's concern was evident in his voice. Then at least I tried, she replied simply. The technicians completed their preparations and stepped back. It's ready, Princess. The channel is secure, but we don't know how long it will remain undetected. Lyra stepped forward and placed her hand on the control panel. The screen flickered to life, displaying the Imperial communication symbol. Moments later, Queen Vega's face appeared. Daughter, the Queen said, relief evident in her voice. You are safe. Mother, Lyra acknowledged. I need to speak with Father. Please. Queen Vega hesitated, then nodded. The screen split to show King Orion, his expression thunderous. Traitor, he growled. You betray your people for these primitives? Father, I'm trying to prevent a terrible mistake, Lyra said firmly. The humans know you're coming. They're prepared to defend their world at any cost. The king scoffed. With what? Primitive weapons that cannot even scratch our ships? With determination and ingenuity that your reports have failed to capture, Lyra answered. And with knowledge. The knowledge Jack and I brought them about your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. Jack stepped into view. Your Majesty, I speak as a soldier. If you proceed with this invasion, you will face resistance unlike anything your empire has encountered before. Humans unite against external threats. We fight to our last breath for our home. Bold words from a primitive species. Admiral Krell's voice came from off-screen. The human speaks truth, Queen Vega interjected. Our intelligence reports confirm they have mobilized globally. They've adapted some of our technology in ways our scientists thought impossible in such a short time. King Orion's eyes narrowed. Even so, the outcome is inevitable. Their resistance will only increase casualties. Father, is that what the Celestial Empire truly represents? Lyra asked, her voice rising with emotion. Slaughter and subjugation. What glory is there in crushing those who cannot match your strength? What honor? The king was silent for a moment. What alternative do you propose, daughter? Alliance instead of conquest, Lyra said immediately. Trade instead of theft. Earth has resources you want. The Empire has technology humans need. Both can benefit without bloodshed. Admiral Krell moved into view, his face contorted with anger. Absurd. We do not negotiate with inferior species, yet this inferior species has managed to adapt our technology, evade our pursuit ships, and prepare defenses in mere weeks, Queen Vega pointed out. Perhaps our assessment of their capabilities was flawed. The debate continued for precious minutes. Jack watched Lyra with growing admiration as she argued passionately for peace, drawing on everything she had learned about diplomatic negotiations from her royal training. Suddenly, a technician burst into the room. Multiple ships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're entering Earth orbit. Jack's heart sank. The Imperial fleet had arrived early. On the screen, King Orion smiled coldly. It seems our discussion is academic. The invasion begins now. No, Lyra cried. Father, please. The communication suddenly cut off as Earth's defense systems detected energy buildups in the Imperial ships, weapons preparing to fire. It failed, Lyra whispered, her four hearts heavy with despair. Jack grabbed her hand. It's not over yet. Come on. They raced back to the command center where Ellis and the other leaders were receiving reports from around the world. First wave of Imperial ships has entered atmosphere over Asia, announced a technician. Second wave approaching North America. Activate. Planetary defense grid, Ellis ordered. Grid online, came the response. Targeting systems locked. Jack and Lyra watched as the screens showed Earth's hastily constructed defenses powering up. Weapons built using the principles of Imperial technology, guided by Jack's knowledge of Imperial tactics. Fire, Ellis commanded. Around the world, defense installations activated simultaneously, not the crude missiles the Empire expected, but concentrated energy weapons that targeted the Imperial ships' vulnerable points. Weaknesses Jack had identified from his time aboard their vessels. To everyone's shock, 3 Imperial ships exploded, immediately. Several others listed in the sky, their propulsion systems damaged. It's working, someone shouted. On another screen, a communication officer reported, We're receiving a transmission from the Imperial flagship. The main screen flickered to life, showing Queen Vega, not King Orion. Her expression was both surprised and thoughtful. This is Queen Vega of the Celestial Empire, she announced. I call for an immediate cessation of hostilities. A stunned silence fell over the command center. We accept, Ellis responded cautiously. The princess spoke truth about your capabilities, the queen continued. The king has agreed to consider alternatives to invasion. The slight pause told Jack volumes about what must have happened aboard the flagship. Queen Vega had seized control, at least temporarily. We propose a diplomatic meeting, the queen said, on neutral ground, to discuss terms for peaceful coexistence. 3 days later, Jack and Lyra stood in an open field where a temporary structure had been erected for the historic first official meeting between Earth and the Celestial Empire. All around, humans and Imperial representatives watched with a mixture of caution and hope. King Orion had been conspicuously absent, delayed by Imperial matters, according to the official explanation. In reality, Queen Vega had effectively taken control of the throne after the king's rash invasion order had resulted in unexpected Imperial casualties. I never thought I'd see this day, Jack said quietly as they watched human leaders and Imperial diplomats exchange formal greetings. Neither did I, Lyra admitted. Though I hoped for it. Queen Vega approached them, her regal bearing commanding respect from both species. Daughter, she said warmly, embracing Lyra. Then she turned to Jack and inclined her head, an unprecedented honor from Imperial royalty to a being of another species. Your Majesty, Jack bowed in return. You have both created something remarkable, the Queen said. A bridge between worlds, the first of its kind in our history. What about Father? Lyra asked. The Queen's expression became careful. He is adjusting to new realities. Admiral Krell and his most ardent supporters have been reassigned to the outer systems, where they can contemplate the value of diplomacy versus conquest. Jack suppressed a smile at the royal version of sent to timeout. And what happens now? Lyra asked. Now we negotiate, her mother replied. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, perhaps in time a true alliance. She looked pointedly at Jack and Lyra standing side by side. You two will be central to this process, the human who protected a princess and the princess who chose to protect humanity. Later, as sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors, Jack and Lyra stood on a hilltop overlooking the diplomatic compound. The first day of negotiations had gone better than anyone expected, with both sides finding more common ground than differences. Your mother called me the human who protected a princess, Jack said, watching the stars appear one by one. But that's not quite right. No? Lyra turned to him, curious. No, he said softly. I'm the human who fell in love with a princess, who saw beyond her royal title and alien features to the person within. Lyra's skin shimmered with emotion, a beautiful biological reaction unique to her species. And I'm the princess who asked her mother for a human, never imagining he would end up changing my world. And his, forever. Your mother knew, Jack said. That day on the royal shuttle, when she agreed to make me your companion. She saw something neither of us recognized. Yet she did, Lyra agreed. When I spoke with her privately today, she told me, you chose well with this human. Jack smiled. And what did you say? I said I didn't choose you, Lyra replied, reaching for his hand. We chose each other, and in doing so, we chose a new path for both our worlds. As the first Imperial ships began peaceful departures from Earth orbit, a show of good faith from Queen Vega, Jack and Lyra stood together between two worlds, architects of a peace no one had thought possible. In the royal palace, light years away, the former Admiral Krell raged against his exile. In a secret laboratory beneath London, scientists studied Imperial technology with wonder. In homes across Earth, humans looked to the stars with new knowledge that they were not alone. And in the Imperial Palace, Queen Vega stood before the Royal Council, speaking of a new era for the Empire, one of diplomacy and mutual respect. All because a princess had asked her mother, "Please, I want this human." And for once, the universe had granted a wish that changed everything.